Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chat. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. So it turns out that Smiling Friends video was worth it. I mean, I was about to say, I was like thinking for the first bit because it wasn't doing so hot immediately, so I was like, I was a little bit like, I don't know. You guys voted on it. You guys voted for that episode to be made earlier, so. And yeah, it was worth it. It was worth it apparently because I'm literally just looking at it, the analytics of the first day or two. Technically the first day of its release, and it's already gotten 2,000 views. And so far, it don't look like it's downtracking quite yet. So yeah, you know your video's doing good, and when you're a small channel, you know your videos are doing good when the comments you get range from "this is a really good video" to calling you Zog slaves for saying Jeffrey Epstein was bad. Like, bro, I'm not even kidding. That's fucking funny. Like, some dude literally went into the comments to be like, "You're an insufferable loser," and it's just like, click his profile picture because I always check the profiles of all the people that comment. Like, just know that, guys. Like, I mean, I'm a small content creator. I read every single comment, and I check the profiles and the pages of the people who do this. Right? Like, I mean, I'm not gonna because the simple one is if I click your profile and it takes you and you shows that you're like a baby. It's like, okay, I'm not gonna respond to you because you're a fucking infant. But then I go to his page and he links his very public Twitter account, and then it turns out he's following an account called Lolly of the Day, and it's just like, and then again he calls me a Zog slave, and it's just like, bro, you literally follow an account called Lolly of the Day. You literally like an art style that is named after the book that is the favorite book of Jeffrey Epstein, a guy with well-known connections to the Israeli intelligence agencies. And you're gonna call me a Zog slave? Like, me, of all people, you're gonna call a Zog slave? That's fucking funny. Was it a bad idea to release 2 banger episodes in a row? Probably. But I did it anyways. If you're one of those people who happen to be of one of these new people who have come across my channel and are now curious at what it is, and you haven't checked the channel overall and just clicked that one video and maybe subscribed afterward and then whatever, basically, just for a quick refresher, even though channel trailer is probably the best place for you guys to do your thing, I might reboost the fucking channel trailer just to get you guys an idea. Basically, the way it works is, on this channel, every 2 weeks, you get one of those, edited videos, and then every week on Monday, you get a podcast like this where I go over the news of the week, whatever, then divulge into a specific topic. Basically, think John Oliver, but worse. With that out of the way, let's get right into the news. First news story comes from India, because India has recently gotten into a bit of a shady situation, a bit of a bad situation, and it is the fact that they have just passed a bill in the Lok Sabha which details their new laws and rules in regards to trans people. Now, the way this bill was presented was that it was presented in a way as if they were going to try and fix the issue, as in the sense of this was pitched as a pro-trans bill, essentially. It was pitched as a way that they are going to streamline the identification of what a transgender person is, specifically by revamping the rules that were already in place with a previous trans bill that happened in 2019, to the point where it is projected as if it's just an amendment to the previous bill. What it actually does is it restricts the definition of a trans person. You see, the definition that was in the 2019 trans bill was basically taking the accepted scientific consensus about transgender people and enshrining them as a group of people, which basically included, it includes people who self-identify as transgender are transgender as the main tenet of being transgender. And it basically now makes it so that the only people that are considered transgender in India are transgender people who have gone through the elusive surgery, bottom surgery, and intersex people. Nobody else who is under the transgender umbrella is considered transgender. People who are on hormone treatment don't count. People who are who I've just discovered that they're transgender, they don't count. Non-binary people, they don't count. And they even go so far as to not even count a lot of people who are trans men. And this basically just leads into a long slew of problems that will come from this. Particularly through federal identification papers, a lot of people have already gone through the process legally in India to go through and change their identification papers. But now, all that's being stripped away to the point where it's just now no longer considered valid. And this is not something that is new in India per se, not specifically about trans people, but the fact the weirdness about the laws where they pass a law and it just kind of retroactively ruins things that have gone through a lot of things prior. Like, if you remember when I covered the Indian political scene previously, I mentioned how Modi passed a law that stated that there was a specific, I forget the exact wording, but there's a specific sect of, there's a specific thing in Islamic law where if you want to, I don't think it was a fatwa, but it was where if you where you do a specific thing and then your marriage is considered null and void, and that is considered legally binding in Islamic law. But then Modi passed a law that made it so that was basically considered null and void, which would, by virtue of doing that, make it so a ton of people in India now are magically remarried. And the reason he did that was because he does not give a shit about the people who are Muslim in India. He really does not. He is a Hindu nationalist and a Hindu fascist. All he does is care about is Hindu people, or what he perceives to be as the correct Hindu people. And things are already getting a bit worse because apparently, in me getting some of that stuff recommended in my feed, I saw a lot of people from India who are transgender pointing out the fact that they can no longer even tweet about pro-trans topics in India due to how the law happened. And they also call out the fact that the law was, despite the fact that even though India apparently doesn't have has a lot of issues with trying to efficiently go through laws in their legislature, they seem to be very, very quick to pass this one. There's not much for me to say, because I think I saw a news story where it said there might be some protests going on at this moment in regards to India, and hopefully the situation, hopefully things get better, but you're going to have to put in a lot of work if you are an Indian in my audience. I know there's at least one Indian in my audience. Hopefully the India coalition seems to be at least very vocal in its support. Not necessarily, are all of them? I don't know if all of them, but at least there was one legislature I saw him giving a speech about this, and it was he was from a more centrist party, and even he was this is really fucked up, and explicitly called out the fact it's don't pretend that you're doing this for the sake of protecting the trans community. So yeah, hopefully things turn out better. Now let's move on to the next story. Israel is announced that it will take control of a large buffer zone in southern Lebanon. Israeli troops will control a large swath of southern Lebanon as part of their campaign against Hezbollah, Defense Minister Israel Katz says. Katz said troops have blown up bridges on the Litani River around 30 kilometers from the Lebanon-Israel border, and a security zone would be established, with displaced residents not being allowed back until northern Israel was safe. 5 bridges used by Hezbollah for the passage of terrorists and weapons had been blown up, he said. The latest escalation began after Iranian-backed Hezbollah fired rockets into northern Israel in retaliation for the killings of Iran's supreme leader and near-daily strikes on Hezbollah despite the November 2024 ceasefire. Since then, 1,072 people have been killed in Lebanon, according to Lebanese Health Ministry, including at least 121 children and 42 health workers. More than 1 million people have been displaced, worsening an existing humanitarian crisis in Lebanon. Israeli officials say that the aim is to protect communities in northern Israel from Hezbollah attacks. Right. Those 121 kids were really causing danger to the top of northern Israel. And this is where the problem is going to arise. Because think about it. They are technically quote-unquote right. Those children were a danger to northern Israel. But that's because they want southern Lebanon to be northern Israel. Greater Israel is the plan. That is the thing. That's the fact. They keep... And I don't even understand. This is the fucking weird part. It's Israel blatantly says, we want a one-state solution. Israel keeps invading other countries and taking their land. And then it's man, why does everyone think that we're trying to take over all the Middle East? And then Israel says, we want to take over all the Middle East. But hey, at least BBC was nice enough to say that this was specifically a retaliatory response, like Hezbollah attacking Israel was an actual retaliation this time. Because I know a lot of times that the news media kind of forgets to mention the fact that most, if not all, of the attacks done in the Middle East toward Israel are literally done in retaliation for something Israel had already done. I'm sure all of those children that Israel brutally murdered in Lebanon are definitely not going to be used in propaganda against Israel. No. And as I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, notice how Netanyahu hasn't been I'm sure a lot of you have probably seen this at one point. I've talked about this before, I think, but it was like everybody's noticed that Benjamin Netanyahu has not really been around for the past couple of days. Everyone's doing the whole oh, is he dead in rumors? But it's not because he's dead. It's because everybody knows that if he were to be out in public, he would be though, because Iran has just made it very abundantly clear. If they know where he is, they're getting to him. That's what's going to happen. And that's why this war has been going on for as long as it has. That's why this war has been going on for as long as it has. Because if the United States is not backing Israel, then there really is no... if the United States is not backing Israel right now, then Netanyahu probably is, literally actually toast. And it's too bad that Netanyahu has to learn FAFO the hard way. This is, the most biggest form of FAFO ever. Maybe that's the game plan. Maybe that's literally the actual game plan for the Trump administration. Because if a quote-unquote U.S. ally like Netanyahu were to be disposed of by Iran, then that would probably propel the United States to at least become more actively involved in it. So I think that might actually be the United States' plan. But yeah, there's really not much more I could say on this topic because it's just another example of the time-old tale story of Israel does bad things happen to Israel, they get confused and say, man, why is everyone fucking attacking us for no reason? So let's move on to the next story. And it is in regards to 2 humanitarian aid boats that were heading to Cuba from Mexico. And the Mexican Navy, stated on Thursday that it had activated a search and rescue operation in the Caribbean to locate those 2 sailboats. Because, basically, if you don't know, I'm not entirely sure if this was the Nuestra Cuba flotilla. This article does not specifically name drop that movement, but it says, this is part of the broader grassroots aid to Cuba, so I'm going to take a wild guess and say it is. But basically, due to the fact that the United States is not able to send aid to, because the United States is, has tightened their embargo on Cuba to try and starve Cuba, because Cuba now does not have that many allies because of the whole, United States meddling in affairs of Latin American countries, causing a lot of Latin American allies of Cuba to no longer be there, and then also literally taking over Venezuela and trying to strangle. They're basically trying to strangle Cuba because Trump wants to I don't necessarily know what I don't know what the plan is. The plan is probably just obvious, just United States imperialism as it always is. But the thing is, I'm not sure what specifically his plan in this field is. I'm not sure if he genuinely thinks this will be a quick one and done thing, or if he's trying to do the thing where it's if they are in a war, then Trump can do a thing where he tries to delay elections or, do anything to make the elections not happen. The thing that he quote unquote jokes to Zelensky about, hey, you cancel the elections, so I'm just saying. But it's if the United States does that, then that would be an actual literal declaration of war against the United States people. The United States has had a long-standing tradition of, for the past 250 years, no matter what the situation is, always had an election. Even when the United States was literally in a civil war, we still had time to run a presidential campaign. There is quite literally no instance in the United States history where a delay or denouncement or full-on cancellation of the elections would be considered a valid form of anything. Just so we're all clear. Or if he's doing that just because he literally thinks that he can take Cuba. It's the same thing with Venezuela. It was the same thing with Iran, where he said there was whispers in the Trump administration, or some random people were saying oh, he literally thought that Iran would topple and then it would be just like Venezuela. Even though, again, with Venezuela, it's the vice president took over. Granted, the vice president of Venezuela has had to basically suck Trump's cock every second of the day, but there's basically not much change except for her. I guess technically, yeah, she has bent the knee a lot in the sense that she is literally also just not even, because That's one of the big things that has been a big show of force that's actually amazing for Claudia Sheinbaum, because Sheinbaum is going so far as to say that no matter what, she will still aid Cuba. There's another story where, like, she said, like, we'll still send oil to Cuba, and, she's obviously letting the Nuestra flotilla go over to Cuba because they had to sail from Mexico to Cuba because, you can't sail directly from America to Cuba because, the embargo. And she stated that the agreement between her and Cuba to have Cuban doctors is showing that, she's still maintaining strength in that situation. Because I think Claudia Sheinbaum kind of understands that of all the Latin American leaders, she's probably the safest to an extent. I mean, technically, of all the Latin American leaders, the safest ones are the ones that Trump has instilled, like Tito Asfuera in Honduras, Nayib Bukele in El Salvador, Argentina's Milei, all those people. Those guys are safe because they are doing the bidding of the United States. But in regards to Latin American left-wing leaders, Sheinbaum's probably the most safe because a war with Mexico would probably be a bit too much. Everybody, like Americans can brush off the war with Iran because the war with Iran is so far. When we start sending troops over there 100%, that's when things get crazy. When the United States declared war in Vietnam, people, there was enough wiggle, there's a lot of that with U.S. history. People were fine with, the abstract of a war in Europe, but the second we had to send our boys over there, that's when people started to have a problem. Same with World War II. Then came, again, Vietnam. The abstract concept of Vietnam, one thing. Then having some U.S. soldiers be deployed there who were already in the military, that's one thing. Then we started getting things like the draft, and it's like, oh shit, this is big. And the only difference between then and now is that we have more readily access to information, so we understand the broader problems even before we have to get to the drastic situations like a draft in Iran. Kind of lost my train of thought, so let's just move on to the next topic, the next news story. And it is apparent, I didn't want to cover this as a news story, but I might as well, because it's a big thing that is happening. So apparently, Hasan Piker is going to be doing a fundraiser with Michigan Senate candidate Abdul El-Sayed. And magically, every single major Democratic politician, I wouldn't necessarily say major Democratic politician, but a lot of Democratic politicians magically, and Democratic Party influencers magically came out of the woodwork to all of a sudden say the same message. If Hasan Piker is a bad person, we shouldn't go to him for support. We blah, 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 it's a bad thing. And literally even going so far as to, even to the point where Mallory McMorrow has came out of the woodwork to say that Abdul El-Sayed is bad for bringing on Hasan Piker, because she said, quote, "It is somebody who says extremely offensive things in order to generate clicks and views and followers, which is not entirely different from somebody like Nick Fuentes. Piker is a provocateur, to put it lightly, who says things that are misogynistic and anti-Semitic, and that the United States deserved 9/11. I think the first person that made this statement was Brad Schneider, a fucking Illinois Democrat who was kind of a loser. But basically, that's just the main talking point. It's we can't do a fundraiser with Hasan Piker because Hasan Piker, he's done the no-nos. We can't bring him on because he's done the no-nos. To which there's a lot of things to say, but the fact that and everybody's basically clowning on it immediately, because this is the thing. There are many things, again, you can say about this. And the big one is this. Talking point is over. This talking point is over. In every sense of the word, this talking point is bullshit. It's over. There is quite literally nothing any of you guys can say that would make us take you seriously. Because you are the same people who said Bernie Sanders was sexist and misogynistic and evil and racist because he ran against Hillary Clinton. You're the same people who said James Tallarico was evil and racist because he dared to, run against Jasmine Crockett. You guys are the same people who said that Graham Plattner is a Nazi, even though you leaked messages of him saying that he wants to murder Nazis. You guys are the same people who actively said, no, do not let Jeff Jackson be the Democratic nominee in North Carolina. We must instead have Cal Cunningham or Cherry Beasley. You guys are the same people who said, no, we all need to collectively agree that Sarah Gideon's the best choice to run against Suzanne Collins. You are the ones who all collectively agreed that it was a good idea to waste a shit ton of money on Amy McGrath and fucking Jamie Harrison. You guys are the same ones who said, let's ignore Biden's age and just thrust him as the nominee come the general election. You are the same people who said, nah, let's not have an open convention and let Kamala Harris be the nominee. You guys wasted all your capital. No one cares. No one cares about any of your talking points anymore. You all are the same people who said that Miss Rachel was anti-Semitic because she said stop murdering children. Your talking points are over. Nobody cares. Not a single fucking person cares anymore about any of the lies that you guys are saying. It's over. There is nothing you can say. If I were running for office or whatever, I would literally be like, there's no point. There's no point in even acknowledging any of the shit they say. Nothing. There is nothing. And this also doesn't make any sense when you literally just analyze the way things were objectively. You guys are the same people who cried, oh, why didn't the Arabs vote for us in this election after we started genociding them? Why did the Muslims not come out to vote for us? These guys turned against us. Why did young Latino men turn against us? Why did young men overall turn against us? Why did this group turn against us? Why did this group? Why did this group? Why did this group? Why did this group? And it's just like, if you want to bring those groups back, you need to endorse people, support people who want to bring those groups into your fold. Like Hasan Piker. I've mentioned this about this race specifically, but Abdul El-Sayed is quite literally the perfect choice for any Democrat who is actually serious about any of the complaints that they have said over the course of this election cycle. You guys were the ones who said, like, oh, Dearborn, Michigan, like Muslims didn't vote for Kamala Harris in that race in Dearborn. That's so bad. It's like, you want to bring those people back in the fold, nominate someone who was on their side. Of course, these guys don't actually think, I mean, they do actually think that, but they don't care. Or the more likelihood is that they actually don't care. It's the same thing with the spoiler effect. If you guys actually care about the spoiler effect, you would have introduced a bill to curb the spoiler effect 1,000,000 years ago. But you guys don't care. You just want the scapegoat. You want the ability to point at the dirty Muslims and go, see, it's your fault that this election was bad. It had nothing to do with any of the things that we said. It's the same reason why the Democratic Party refuses to release the 2024 autopsy report. Because literally every person who has talked about that in behind the scenes has explicitly said, it was Gaza, it was Gaza, it was Gaza. If they don't have to actually say it was Gaza, then they don't have to do anything to address their concerns about Gaza. If they release it and it's known to everybody that Gaza is the reason why they lost, then the only solution for them would be to adapt their policy on Gaza. But if they keep it in the mysterious ether of, oh, maybe it was hypothetically Gaza, but we'll never know because the autopsy was never released, then they can pretend to not know that that's the reason why they lost. And it's also funny, it's like, you guys do this, and then you guys go to, like, this is the dumbest thing, it's like, Hasan Piker is literally one of the most popular streamers ever. Why would you not want him on your fold? Why would you not want him as part of your team? In the politics sphere, especially on the left-leaning politics sphere, there is no one who is even remotely in competition with him. I've mentioned this in a previous news story before, but like there was like that thing where it's like Chorus, where Democrat like influencers were literally being revealed to be paid like $8,000 a month to influence them, and I have no earthly clue who any of these people are. That's your problem. I'm the age demographic that these people are supposed to be aiming towards, and I have not heard a single fucking peep about any of their influencers. I've heard about basically every single right-wing influencer, and I've heard about Hasan Piker, but I've not heard a single thing from any of these so-called Democratic Party influencers that they literally fork over $8,000 a month to. I remember looking into one of them, and I'm literally looking at their results, and I literally, I had more subs and more views on my most recent video than he did. And it was just like, you guys are doing a terrible job. You're paying influencers who can't influence. Meanwhile, the most popular, left-leaning influencer in the fucking country wants to give a support to one of your top races in the field, which could possibly make or break who controls the Senate, And you guys are like, nah, we don't want him. That makes no sense. That makes no sense. And this is another big thing. I want to just say this. Like, a lot of people are like trying to do the whole thing about like comparing him to Nick Fuentes is bad, but I'm just here to say it. The comparison with Nick Fuentes is completely valid. Not in the sense of like an ideological perspective. I'm not saying that Hasan Piker is a Nazi or whatever, but that's the thing. Hasan Piker and Nick Fuentes are two provocateur influencers who are very popular, particularly among the exact generation that is growing up to become the next voting base for the remainder of this time period. They have influenced Gen Z and possibly Gen Alpha politics so much. These two are the future of American politics. You can shit and hate it all you want, but that's a fact. That is an actual fact that Hasan Piker and Nick Fuentes are the future of American politics. If America was honest with itself, the 2020 election would be between these two. I'm not saying this as a fan of either of them. I don't give a fuck about either of them, but that's just an objective fact of reality. And this notion like, oh, we shouldn't be talking with Nick Fuentes and stuff. It's like, bro, Donald Trump invited Fuentes to the White House and then won another term after that. Do you guys clearly understand that they don't fucking care? Like, these people do not fucking care. Like, it's the stupid fucking notion of like, oh, like, you know, they go low, we go high. It's like, guys, again, like, literally, Trump openly, like, talks with and meets up with a fucking Nazi influencer. Again, these two are the future of American politics. You can tell this because literally every single young Republican's fucking chat logs that get leaked reveals that they're all fucking neo-Nazis. And I guarantee you, if we were to talk to any young Democrat, they would say they are much more in line with fucking, like, Hasan Piker than fucking, like, I don't know who the fuck like David Pakman. David Pakman is like one of the people who was in the fucking like Democrat influencer gate or whatever. But it's like, that's just, again, an objective fact of reality. The future of the Democratic Party is Hasan Piker. The future of the Republican Party is Nick Fuentes. If you guys wanted to stop it, you guys had plenty of opportunity to try. In fact, Dems, you did try. You failed. It only would have worked if any of your strategies actually led to like actual results. Like, guys, if you guys wanted to stop Hasan Piker from becoming a prevalent member of the Democratic Party or the Democratic Coalition, where you need his endorsement and need his support to fucking win an election, then you guys probably should have, A, picked a competent person to be the fucking president in the 2020 election, B, actually let that guy do good things so that any sort of actual influence that left-wing forces could have had would have been siphoned off into the Democratic Party's fold, and C, actually allowed a person to succeed him to continue the legacy and to work off of the bad things and say, like, we're not going to do the bad things he did and we're only going to do the good things that he did and do better things. You guys did not do that. You picked a dementia-ridden cancer patient, had many of your fucking own party members, like, stab him in the back and then gut his own fucking policy agenda so that his policies are fucking trash, and then picked a woman who clearly had no fucking clue what she was doing and couldn't even win her own fucking primary on her own. You guys tried and you failed, so now your only option is to be a follower. You lead or you follow or get the fuck out of the way. Those are your only options. You failed the leading part, so now your only options left are to follow or get out of the way. Speaking of getting out of the way, OpenAI is shutting down Sora after a few months. And almost immediately afterwards, Disney had canceled the partnership they had with OpenAI, which was, again, it was a thing that was kind of obvious was going to happen. The AI bubble was going to burst at some point. And the AI bubble has not officially burst, but this is clearly a very good indicative sign that the AI bubble is about to burst. And there's like so much about the fucking AI bubble, it's just so fucking weird. And it's like one thing that even like just in retro, just thinking about it, when I was thinking about it a bit more objectively, really just understood like, guys, how did you think that this was going to fucking work in a fucking long-term goal? Because it got recommended like a thing where it pointed out like there was like a study where it was like a bunch of like Gen Z people can easily pick out like AI generated stuff and then immediately just go, oh, so this product is just trash, and then just not move forward with it. And that's the thing, like everybody understands this. Like if you AI generate a thing, they know the objective fact, like you as a company did not have enough money to pay an actual artist. You guys did not have enough money to actually pay for a photo. You had no money to do any of these things that a good, prosperous company would have done. So we assume that your product is cheap. And that's the fact about just AI in general. Like AI is literally made to be a cheap, stupid looking gimmick. It was made to be a cheap, stupid looking gimmick. And that's why people were even on board with it up to the beginning. Like, I mean, I just gotta be real. I did AI generated stuff. I'm particularly happy about it. In fact, I even decided to put a playlist. I might link the playlist. I will probably be available publicly now, but it's a playlist that I literally called, it's called like videos that I ruined by putting AI in them. Because very early on in AI, no one understood the real, literal big implications of AI. They understood it was like a small little gimmick thing. And, you know, for that short period of time when it was just a gimmick thing, people didn't mind. Like when it generated voices that were so obviously completely fake, people were fine with doing it. But now that it is at the point where it can generate voices that sound pretty realistic to the point where it can trick people into thinking that something is real, then it's like, oh shit, that's really bad. When it generated images of fucking like Will Smith looking like completely like disgusting trash when he was eating noodles, it was like, haha, that's funny, because it's so fucking stupid. But then when it generates something that almost looks real, it's like, oh shit, this is actually pretty bad. Especially when we get AI companies that just openly admit that they want to do bad things with their AI. Like when I did my video on like the dead internet theory and pointed out to like the AI generated companies like literally just openly selling you the products of, hey, we can generate you and another person making like kissing each other if you put your images into our AI database. And that's why these AI companies have had to desperately try to convince you all that AI is this secretly good tool. That's why they've tried desperately to convince you AI is a good tool, because they've been putting so much money into it that if it fails, it's just going to be bad for them. And that's the inevitable truth. Unfortunately, if AI truly is a big cornerstone of the United States economy at this point, then the US economy is about to be in for a massive shit show when the AI bubble bursts. Like the same thing that happened with the dot-com bubble, the same thing that happened with the housing market. It's going to happen. That's just what's going to happen. We could have done anything to not participate and do anything to like fix that problem, but it's just, we failed in that regard, and it's just going to happen. It's also why, like, you know, Sam Altman and all these other AI companies have been desperately trying to, like, you know, get involved with, like, you know, AI, like pay off a bunch of politicians and, like, pay off, like, Donald Trump, because when that bubble inevitably bursts, they want to make sure that all the money they put in, they inevitably get back. So that's what's going to happen. But one thing is I just thought about this recently when I was like thinking about like the whole like AI thing and like that study about like the whole like people like, oh, we see the AI and it automatically looks cheap. Because there's one thing about the AI thing that really hit me recently. That's just like, how did anybody think this was going to work long term? And it was the fact that it's like, generating AI generating real, like, looking images of people, and it's just like, how did you guys think this was going to work long term when there's literally a media trope specifically about how this is a bad idea? Because if you don't know about media tropes, there is one media trope called the uncanny valley. And it is a media trope where you make something that looks so realistic, but it's not real. Like, it is not a real person. But you make something that looks almost so real, it looks almost identical to a human. But since it's not human, it will always look wrong because it's not a person. It can be done in a lot of ways. You know, like robotics is like one of the primary examples. Like if you make a robot that looks just like a human, but is not a human, it's not really a human, you're going to feel like an innate form of disgust. You're going to feel an innate like level of like not just disgust, but like creepiness. Like, this is not human. This looks like a human, but it's not. But there's also like, you know, like animation where it's like they make like older like stuff that looks photorealistic, but when you try desperately to be realistic, it just doesn't look right. And now that we've gotten to the point where it's like oversaturation of like CGI animation that looks realistic, we have gotten to the point where now it just looks fake. Apparently there's even a TikTok trend where people are literally drawing or making themselves up to look like they're not real, to make themselves look like Uncanny Valley. And they do look fucking terrifying, because it's just the idea of somebody that is trying to look human, trying to look real, trying to act real, but they're not, is just an innately like, no, that is wrong. So I don't understand how they thought like AI generated like real life things and trying to make it be like, this will replace humanity. I don't understand how this would have made it like fucking like work. But anyways, let's move on to the last story, and it's a copyright story because it's an interesting one. So the Supreme Court has sided with Cox Communications in a copyright fight with record labels over downloads. And it's a very basic news story where it was like I think it was Sony, I think it was. And Sony basically went, hey, we've noticed that the internet service provider Cox Entertainment, no, it's not Cox Entertainment, but it's Cox Communications. Yeah, Cox Communications. Named after the former presidential candidate, James Cox. That's actually real, look it up. But they were saying like, hey, Cox, haha, get it funny. But they were telling them, you guys are basically allowing a lot of these like copyright infringements to go on your services. That's bad, and we're going to take you to court for that. And the Supreme Court stated that, no, they have absolutely no reason, like they have no jurisdiction, that they'd have no liability for copyright violations of its customers. Cox does not encourage the use of copyright infringement, obviously, but they don't have a liability to, like, since they don't encourage it, they have no reason to, like, be blamed for if it happens. And this is a big, like, debate that has been going on with a lot of, like, internet service providers and internet companies and, like, internet, like, social media apps, because, like, you know, like, there's always that question about the fine line about, like, you know, what do they, like, what, like that fine line about, like, what do they allow, what do they not allow, what do they, like, do, what do they, like, what, like, at what point, where is the line drawn? Like, where they are considered liable for things that happen on their services or on their platforms. Like, I mean, if I remember correctly, this was kind of like the argument that was used during the SESTA case, but, like, you know, obviously for a different thing, where it was like, SESTA was arguing that, like, the companies that are very much liable for sex trafficking that is put on their sites. So that's a bit of a different thing, but, like, it's like, again, like, this is broadly a case of, like, internet freedom and such. So yeah, there's not much else for me to say on that. It's just kind of like, I just wanted to mention that because, you know, I'm the intellectual property reform guy. I'm trying to get people more radicalized on intellectual property reform. By the way, if you're one of the new people on this page, copyright reform videos I made, check those out. Anyways, with that out of the way, let us move on to the main topic of this video. This episode is going to be a bit more of a lighthearted topic. I've covered topics that are a bit more, you know, I guess serious. You know, I've covered, you know, like the last episode was me covering the Peruvian presidential election. But this episode, we're going to go with a bit more of a lighthearted one. Just because this is one I've actually wanted to do for a bit. Not necessarily, I mean, I didn't know if I wanted to do this as a podcast or if I wanted to do this as a main series video. I did contemplate doing this as a main series video, as a top 10 list. But, it doesn't deserve a main series video. It deserves just a podcast just because, again, this is just a funny topic that I wanted to do. The first thing I will say is this. Every single incumbent Republican politician and pundit has cucked themselves to Donald Trump. Every single one. And yes, that includes Thomas Massie. Don't forget, Thomas Massie voted against a bill that stated that he voted against a bill that was reaffirming the peaceful transfer of power and voted against impeaching Trump for trying to coup the United States government. Now, Massie has of course not reached the level of cuckery where he has become pro-pedophile, but he still cucked himself a tad. And that's the thing. In the modern day Republican Party, you have to cuck yourself to Donald Trump a little bit. You don't have to do it all the way, but you have to do enough that he doesn't fucking, like, go against you. Joe Walsh is currently a resist lib now, but he literally tweeted that he would lead an insurrection if Trump lost the 2016 election. he had to cuck himself a little bit too. There are very few Republican politicians that have literally never cucked themselves to Donald Trump. And you might say, would you consider any single vote pro Donald Trump to be cucking yourself to the Donald Trump? Yeah, but what I mean is more in the sense of like, just like stuff like that. Like, I mean, again, like Massey, Massey, of course, obviously would have voted alongside Donald Trump on a lot of issues because, of course, they're both Republicans. But what I mean is, like, Massey explicitly voted against a bill that stated to reaffirm the peaceful transition of power, and when met with the opportunity to impeach Trump for the very impeachable offense that he did, he chose not to. And also, he literally believes Donald Trump's big lie. He literally wrote a letter saying, like, well, yes, I do believe that there was rigging in the 2020 election. You guys are not being certified, so you can't do it. Like, I mean, for example, Mitt Romney. I don't necessarily know full extent of Mitt Romney's, like, voting record. I'm trying to remember. Let me double check. Yeah, Romney was a cuck because he voted for the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation, even though that was, like, obvious bullshit. Bill Cassidy, who voted for Trump's second impeachment and literally openly said that he did not endorse Donald Trump's 2024 bid, he would then in turn vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be the Health and Human Services guy, even though even though Bill Cassidy is a doctor and he is like an advocate for vaccinations, he voted for an anti-vax crank to be the nominee because he was afraid of his own party voting against him, which isn't even going to work. Stuff like that is what I consider more cuckery, like actually selling out whatever principles you had in order to, like, be, like, whatever, in order for that. General Republican voting with is probably not necessarily qualified, but you get what I'm saying when I say with Massey. Again, there are various levels of cuckery, but, basically all of the Republicans in the modern day have to choose to cuck themselves to Donald Trump a little bit. Even Justin Amash, who voted for Trump's first impeachment, had to try and, like, at least try to be, like, somewhat conciliatory to Donald Trump when he ran for Senate. And it's just very interesting to watch all this play out now, considering just how this moves forward, because this was destined to fail. Every fascist project fails eventually. They always fail eventually, because fascism and reactionary politics is an ideology that is built on the inherent contradiction of their movement. Their enemies are both weak and feckless, but also secretly running the world. Their followers are both extremely strong and powerful, and yet also must submit to the man on top. When you run out of scapegoats to blame, and the issues that you claim will go away don't go away, people rise up against you. How they choose to do so remains to be seen. If you are lucky, and there are some democratic influencers and means left, you'll just get voted out. And if you're extremely lucky, they are angry and want to do anything more. But that seems to not necessarily be the case for a lot of American voters, which the Trump administration has seemed desperately to point out. Like, if we lose the midterms, we're done, as if that is supposed to be scary to people. It is scary purely in the sense of, like, what will he do if he really feels he's backed into a corner? Well, that's yet to be seen, my friends. We'll have to figure that out, how it goes. But let's avoid, like, the discussions of, like, possible, like, really bad things that could happen in the future, and let's focus on funny ha-has. Let's ask the very simple question. Of all of the Republican politicians, who are the ones who are the biggest cucks? To reaffirm what cucking yourself means in this sense, I mean, in the most basic sense, selling out your principles to support Donald Trump. And when you get into all these candidates, you'll see what I mean when I go through them. I was originally desperately searching for 10, but I can't find 10. We're only going to be going over 8. I found these 8 are definitely big choices, but I really only made this video so I can talk about number 1 because, I've been desperate to say this about number 1 for a long period of time. I desperately wanted to give him this title for so long, so let's just get into it. Alright, first, number 7, we have Jeff Van Drew, a smaller but somewhat prominent choice in my mind, because he's kind of like the easiest way to tell how this works. Now, for those who don't know, Jeff Van Drew is a member of the United States Representatives from New Jersey, District 2, I believe. And when he was first elected, he was elected as a blue dog Democrat. And he was considered like one of the big names in the blue dog Democrat sphere. Like literally, that was his big thing. He was like one of the ones that the Democrats like basically put a lot of money into getting him to win that seat. And as is typical for blue dog Democrats, he had a very interesting voting record, especially when you contrast that with his own party. He opposed Pelosi for Speaker of the House. He was part of the Equality Caucus. He voted against the Trump impeachment. And he kind of had like just a general vibe of being unique. Because like that's one of the things about the United States House of Representatives. You have to do something to make yourself unique. Like there are 435 people in the House of Representatives. For now, Mr. Beat, see if you can uncap the House. But the point is, you have to do something to set yourself apart from the rest of the people. Like, the only ones who are going to be known are the House leadership and the ones who are the most loud. So like basically in the current United States House of Representatives, we really only know like the most loud voices on the Republican side, the most loud voices on the Democratic side. So, we know AOC and the squad, and then we know, some of the most loudest and egregious Republicans on the Republican side. Blue dogs, of course, set themselves apart from the rest of the Democratic Party because they always, make themselves, we oppose whatever the Democratic Party is supporting at the time, whether it be Obamacare or, Build Back Better plan or whatever. And sometimes you don't even need to do anything in regards to policy. Sometimes you just gotta do something small, like just how you look. Like Earl Blumenauer. Earl Blumenauer was known for wearing a little button on him that said that had a little bicycle on it, and that was kind of his style. He wore a bow tie and he had a little button of a bike. Frederica Wilson wears a cowgirl hat everywhere she goes. That's her style. And I'm just gonna I hope I will show a picture of Jeff Van Drew from his first term, and you can see he definitely has at least a unique style. Like if I showed you a picture of Jeff Van Drew, you'd be able to be like, that is Jeff Van Drew. He wore that weird pattern on his suit. He, had that weird fucking haircut. Like, he just looks unique. He looks like you could pick him out of all of the fucking, Democrat. If I showed you the Democratic caucus, you could pick him out. There are some Democrats that blend in with each other, but there are some that, he's unique. Then he got a lot of shit for voting against the impeachment. And after very briefly trying to say, no, I'm not going to switch parties, I just happen to have a disagreement with my party on this one issue, magically, he decided to become a Republican in the next term and run for re-election for, the Republicans for all of ensuing terms. And in the immediate aftermath of Jeff Van Drew switching parties, everything that was unique about him was sucked out of him. Literally. His appearance, he just looks like another Republican. His suit, his unique suit, gone. His fucking weird tan, gone. His weird hairstyle, gone. Everything that made him unique just visually is gone. But that's just a visual representation. Vote-wise, he literally just did the same thing. He just became a Republican. Remember how I said he used to be a member of the Equality Caucus? Now, magically, he doesn't support the Equality Caucus no more. He doesn't like gay people no more. He's just another face in the Republican fold. And that's just one of the big failures. That's the reason why, people like Manchin didn't do that. They don't, everybody kept saying Manchin, you just become a Republican. Why would he? He would become like Jeff Van Drew. He'd just become a nobody. And that is why he cucked himself. Next person on the list is Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yes, I know she's not an incumbent, but I just can't have this list without her. And it's ironically the fact that she jumped off the train that made me want to put her on the list. If she was still in the cult, then maybe I could still just not put her on the list. But it's the fact that she saw at the tail end of it that her entire career was based on a lie. Literally. That's everything about Marjorie Taylor Greene is just fucking funny to me. She built her whole brand on being the QAnon congresswoman. She was going to be Trump's biggest ally in the House of Representatives. She was going to be his AOC. What AOC is to Bernie, she would be to Donald Trump. She was going to say every incendiary MAGA QAnon conspiracy theory that she believed. She was going to say it loudly and proudly. She was going to do, and when she was in the House, she would do everything in her power to make sure that Donald Trump's will was met. Even if that meant turning against everything that her base stood for. Because the MAGA base and what Donald Trump does, they don't align always 100% of the time. And we know this, obviously, especially given the Iran war that's going on. I mean, a lot of this stuff has been going on for a long time. Like, the alt-right built Donald Trump's presidency, and they almost immediately turned on him because he became a massive supporter of Israel. When you run on America first, and then magically become Israel first, people are going to notice. When you build your whole platform of, we're going to drain the swamp, and then magically every single Republican politician who was part of the swamp magically gets appointed to your administration, they're going to notice. And when they start making moves that they wouldn't do, they're going to notice. Like the MAGA movement, remember, Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, and a couple of other MAGA people were like, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that fucking, no Kevin McCarthy, no Mike Johnson, fuck them. They're like establishment rhino pigs, and we need to stop them at every means necessary. But Donald Trump went, ring, ring, hello, guys. You guys need to make sure that the Republicans just get the seat. Stop fighting. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, she went right in. She said, yes, master, I will do everything you say. Did you honestly expect Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people, to not be a part of that group? In any other scenario, she would have been. But Master Donald told her not to. And she did everything right. She followed him to the ends of the earth. Every time the MAGA people were like, man, Donald is not necessarily following everything we want him to do. She's like, don't worry, guys. Trust me. This is all part of the plan. This is all part of the plan. And again, she gave her entire loyalty to Donald Trump. And then when she did, and saw that he didn't return the favor when she wanted to run for Senate, all of a sudden everything became clear. No matter what she did, she was never going to be important to the movement. She put so much of her brand into this movement, and they tossed her away without a second. Not just that. Then when she started explicitly saying some criticisms of Donald Trump, then he immediately turned against her. It's like, I'm going to primary your ass and get you out of here. She was literally tossed away like a fucking, piece of fucking garbage. And that's fucking funny. That's funny to me. That is absolutely hilarious to me. This is what fascist movements do. She was never meant to be important. None of the fascist movement people are. None of the people in the fascist movement are important. None of the Groypers, Nick Fuentes does not give a shit about any of the Groypers, and he makes it abundantly clear every single time they fucking donate to him. None of the MAGA supporters mean anything to Donald Trump. None of these people mean anything to him. And he's made it abundantly clear over and over and over again. Now, technically, I had to put Marjorie Taylor Greene near the bottom because she technically did uncuck herself a tad by the end by seeing the light. But again, the fact that she built her entire fucking brand on this to not only then only see the light is funny to me. And yes, she did cuck herself still. Next person on the list is actually a surprise one that I literally just thought of in my head. Because again, I kept in my brain focusing on incumbents. I keep forgetting that he's still an incumbent. Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis, the guy who literally owes his career to fucking Donald Trump. Literally. He was a guy who was going to run for Senate, but then Marco Rubio jumped back into the Senate race, and he was like, okay, I gotta go back to the House. And then he was like, I want to be governor of Florida now. But he was fucking failing, and then said, please, Donald, can you endorse me? And Donald Trump said, fine, I'll endorse you, and then endorsed him. And then Donald Trump basically helped rig the race so that he was then literally forced to be the fucking, governor of fucking Florida. Trump literally admitted this, by the way. He actually admitted, it was him, turning down certain number of voters in the state that made it so that Ron DeSantis would win the state ultimately. And Ron DeSantis made, fucking ads where he literally, was talking about, I read my children bedtime stories of Donald Trump. And literally, he teaches his kids to build the wall. And it's just, this is very creepy and pathetic. And then, immediately after, he was always pitched to be basically, he was predicted to be the guy after Trump lost. Everyone predicted that, in the next election, after Pence and him, everybody predicted that it was going to be, DeSantis was supposed to be the guy, the next guy. Whether it was, him becoming, the VP at one point and then becoming the presidential nominee. But then it's just magically Rupert, then they basically wanted to dump the MAGA movement before Trump was ready to leave because they were like, he was literally the last chance for them to jump to get MAGA away. And then DeSantis jumped in and he failed. Like, quite literally, it's just like fucking funny. And then he burnt all this political capital. So now he literally has no chance to be the savior of the MAGA movement now, since he turned his back on Trump. So again, he technically uncucked himself by removing himself from the Trump train by technicality, but come on, he basically counts. And the one that is the previous person who was of this ilk, but did it kind of in reverse, Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz, the guy who was once seen as the anti-Trump candidate, the only guy who could beat Donald Trump. The man who had his wife personally insulted by Donald Trump, and now does all of Trump's bidding. Like, literally every week of this current administration, people have found old videos of Ted Cruz in 2016, literally stating about where it's like, we can't nominate Trump because he'll do X, Y, and Z. And then he'll literally be describing things that are happening in this term. The one that made me laugh the most was when Ted Cruz was literally describing the prospect of Donald Trump invading Greenland, and now Ted Cruz is just openly, giddily talking about, yes, we must invade Greenland. Like, remember, this is the same guy, these are the same people who said that Ted Cruz's dad was a fucking, like, who killed JFK. Ted Cruz was literally, like, the biggest, like, most insulted person from the Trump campaign outside of Hillary, because he was the only person standing in his way. And yet again, now he's just doing the bidding of Donald Trump. And since being part of the fascist movement and being part of the Trump cult is literally giving away all of your identity to Trump, Ted Cruz can't even take credit for any of the shit that he does. Like, it's funny, like, literally, I found, like, take this section from his Wikipedia's opening paragraph. It says, in May of 2025, Cruz introduced a bill to create what would later become Trump accounts. Literally, a Cruz-led bill is being gifted to Donald Trump. Like, he can't even take credit for his own fucking shit. That's fucking funny. Massive cuckery, but an even bigger cuck is Islet Drabag. Oh, I'm sorry. Tulsi Gabbard. Islet Drabag, the woman who literally went from crying about Trump goading us into a war with Iran to literally pushing that talking point relentlessly. The opposition for her, like the op and like the fucking like all the shit that was being done for her was like it took a long fucking time, pushing a ton of people to back her even when she said things that they didn't agree with it. Like, I mean, like the fucking like toll stand like saga on fucking Twitter. Like, if you had probably had to be there because it's like so fucking weird. It was like these people who all seem to have connections to the U.S. military, by the way, like Jackson Hinkle and Nico House. These people who allegedly hate Israel, but then somehow, you know, she loves Israel. They claim to hate imperialism, and then she says that she loves imperialism when it's talking about radical Islamic terrorism. Like, quite literally, it was just like, it was all an obvious op from day one. And it's funny in retrospect that we all fucking fell for it. Well, I mean, I don't know if all of us fell for it, but I'm not gonna say all of us fell for it, but some of us were stupid enough to fall for it. I didn't fall for it too much, because even I was like, hey, this toast stand fucking, like, stuff is a bit cringe, but, you know, whatever. Literally, it's just funny in retrospect, and shows how, like, just one subsection of American isolationists are just never good. Like, American isolationism is stupid. You have to truly be an anti-imperialist, an actual, like, left-wing anti-imperialist, to be specific, to really have any sort of semblance on foreign policy. Because we all see this when it comes to literally every single person. And I think I just figured out a person who I could put in this list. But, again, I guess I'll mention them, like, possibly. But it's like this one section of, like, right-wing isolationism that truly just doesn't really work as an actual legitimate factor for this movement. Because, like, their movement just truly cannot be, like, their movement is always built on the idea of, like America. Like, I mean, what's good for Americans? But then it's like, but objectively, like, a lot of these imperialistic endeavors do help America. They make America stronger on the world scene. They make America, like, more powerful on the world scene. They do a lot of things that, quote unquote, help America. Allegedly lower oil prices and that kind of stuff. But that's always the level that they go with that. But if you are truly a anti-imperialist in a real sense, then it wouldn't matter if these were good or bad for America. you would be against it because being against it is your position. You believe on a moral or practical level that these sort of like interventions are bad. You always find out that these isolations are always willing to make exceptions for certain areas. And in a similar vein to like people like Van Drew, Tulsi Gabbard has magically changed all of her positions to now align with this era of America, like this specific era of American politics. She was once one of the leaders in Congress to end our punitive drug issues. Now her job as the DNI bitch claims that now like drug trafficking is the biggest issue in the world scene. She once voted to impeach Trump because he tried to overthrow the government. Now she actively tries to participate in overthrowing the government again with the rise of like the fucking like Fulton County thing. She was once part of the LGBTQ equality caucus and one of the spearheaded movements for like LGBTQ equality. Now she blames like, you know, the woke agenda. She claims that the Democrats are the real imperialists, and then she cheers for imperialism. It's just all fucking stupid and insane. And this next person, who I think could also possibly round it up to 10. Because this is a person, and this is the only reason why I didn't want to include this person initially, because they're not a Republican. But I guess I'll include them for the sake of inclusion, because this is a person that I just want to talk a bit shit about. Dave Smith. Dave Smith is not a libertarian. Dave Smith is a fucking loser. He is basically a Republican op who lied to you in saying that he was a conservative. But I could also just broadly include every single one of those like libertarians that are like fucking like that. Like Michael Rechtenwald and like Angela McArdle, all those people. They're all fucking cucks. All of them. Because there is no way that any of these people believed any of the words that they said. None of these people should be, like, all these people have been trying to, like, nowadays, pretend like, oh, like, well, we hate Israel. No, you don't. You voted for Israel's bitch in the election. That is what happened. Dave Smith actively looked at the two candidates. And he said the guy endorsed by Ben Gvir, the guy endorsed by Netanyahu, the guy who stated that he would absolutely support Israel no matter what, that was the candidate he was going to support. He sold out literally every single semblance of libertarian principles to back Donald Trump. He supported, like, libertarians are supposed to be non-interventionist or isolationist. He backed internationalists, who was an imperialist. He backed the guy who was considered one of the most punitive in regards to drug crimes. He even went so far as to literally claim that the Libertarian Party's platform, like the Libertarian Party and libertarians broadly, do not believe in borders. They do not believe in borders, they do not believe in governments. And yet somehow Dave Smith magically goes, oh, well, I believe in governments and borders when it comes to governments and borders. That's when I agree with it. Why were you a member of the Libertarian Party if you literally also believe that fucking open borders was a stupid idea? That is literally the Libertarian Party's platform. The Libertarian Party's platform explicitly states that they believe that financial and human capital must be able to transition across state lines or even national lines. He looked at the guy who wanted to support a war with Iran since day one of his administration and went, this guy will definitely not support a war with Iran. I genuinely do not understand. Like, literally, the only reasonable way that any single person would not know that Donald Trump supported a war with Iran is if they woke up the day of the election, were magically transported to a voting booth, and then given the option Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, and told right before they go in, oh, by the way, Donald Trump does not support a war with Iran. That's the only route. Like, literally, that is the only route. And you also had to be an infant during the Trump administration. You had to be in a coma for the entire previous Trump term. Because anybody who was paying attention to the first Trump term would know that Donald Trump wanted to go to war with Iran. You don't get to play like, oh, I didn't know. Like, if you admit that you didn't know, it means that you were telling me that you are super fucking stupid and we should not be taking you seriously as a political commentator. There are only two routes. Your only routes are you intentionally lied to us during the 2024 election, or you are fucking stupid and we should not take you seriously as a political commentator at all. Those are your only two options. You don't get an option where you get to somehow be considered a good, reasonable person who is a political commentator, and then also unironically believe that Donald Trump in the fucking election was somehow against the war with Iran. Remember, first Trump term, day one, he pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. And the last day, he strikes Soleimani. You, as an adult man, you as a fully grown, fully adult man, could not possibly come to any other conclusion other than he supported war with Iran. There is no reasonable person who would look at that guy and go, he does not support a war with Iran. Also pointing out the fact that he literally, the week before the election, said, I will strike Iran's nuclear facilities. Fucking idiot, you're a cuck. Speaking of cucks, big one coming up. This is the last stretch. We got some of the biggest cucks out there. Biggest Cucks coming in. And this one's a big one. Lindsey Graham. The guy who bent over for Donald Trump so fast that to this day, people still think that he's gay. Oh, were you expecting me to say something about that? No. They're right. They're just fucking right. He's like the most obvious fucking gay guy in the world. Like, I mean, just unequivocally gay. He's a fucking gay guy. I mean, given the fact that he's basically been blowing Trump for like fucking 10 years at this point. Dude, he's clearly putting in the work. His turncoatness on Donald Trump is so fucking interesting that there's literally a term associated with it called Lindsey Graham syndrome, where literally Lindsey Graham admitted that he walked back on all of his critiques of Trump, specifically because Lindsey Graham lost and Donald Trump won, because it was like considered like one of the quote unquote flaws of democracy, where it's like, he basically says like, well, my analysis was rejected, so it is best to interest that I help the president. But it's like, it's not even just like he's like helping the president get his agenda passed. Like, he's just fully, like, officially just like any criticism that he has had have just magically disappeared. And now he just loves Donald Trump. Now, it's because he knows, like, it's because he just clearly doesn't give a shit about he doesn't have any values, and he just wants to support whoever the fuck is like the guy on top. Because he's a fucking bottom bitch. But it's actually surprising that he didn't make it into the top 3, but that's because the top 3 are pretty notable in my eyes. Number 3, we have, like, the guy who gets a bronze is J.D. Vance, the couch fucker himself. Vance, like basically every mainstream Republican at the time, was like, well, no, Donald Trump is ewy and yucky, both publicly and privately. He unequivocally called Donald Trump America's Hitler. Like, there is no semblance of the word where you would look at this guy and go, this guy will be Donald Trump's running mate in the next election, or a election. In 2020, he pulled the Peel turn because that's when Donald Trump was the incumbent and the de facto nominee. So basically that was the point in American history where every single where Republicans really made their choice on what they wanted to do. Like, the ones who truly, like, cucked themselves at one point or another made their choice in that election. 2024 was the true solidifier moment, but 2020 was the one where it was like, that was like made abundantly clear that who was truly cucking themselves at one point or another. Like, you could make some excuse in 2020, but you shouldn't, because again, they had the choice. They could have like at least stayed quiet, but the ones who chose to not stay quiet are the ones who were very obviously showing themselves that they were going to cuck themselves because he's the guy on top. That's when they began starting to see Trump as an inevitability for the future of the Republican Party. But privately, Vance still maintained his critiques of Trump, saying that he was going to lose the election and that it was going to be a bad opportunity for the Republicans going forward. Then, when a career opportunity came knocking on the door with the Ohio election, magically, J.D. Vance goes, I actually love Donald Trump. He's amazing. I love him so much. Meanwhile, he's very furiously humping a couch, and then magically he becomes the Ohio Senate nominee, and then begins to make a big speech where he says, like, I mean, if I were the vice president, I would have rejected the election results, Master Donald. I would have disobeyed the Constitution and all the laws if I was the VP, sir. And now, magically, J.D. Vance is the vice presidential nominee now. Granted, at least that's fair. He's the most transparent of all the bunch. All of them try to hide it, but Vance was like at least the fucking most honest about it. He hated Trump, and then now he just loves him because he wanted a career opportunity. He literally basically plastered on his face fucking like, I love Donald Trump. And it's literally, as I'm thinking about this right now, that I could have thought about Andy Ogles, but I don't know how Andy Ogles is like really a shifting in that regard. But I'm just going to briefly mention him as like a brief, like, I guess like a honorable mention, just because I wanted to mention the fact like this is the same guy who literally introduced a bill that said that Donald Trump can seek a third term. But the real number 2 is Marco Rubio. The guy who was meant to be the neocons' new face in the party. Little Marco got punted by Trump in 2016 and is now literally one of his underlings. Now, you could say that he was kind of destined to do this because he was part of the Tea Party wave, and the Tea Party wave is what is seen as the thing that led the wave to Donald Trump. But Rubio, again, was a bit different than other Tea Partiers. Like, Rand Paul is a Tea Partier, but he's not on the list because he's at least maintained some actual criticisms of Donald Trump. Ted Cruz was a Tea Party, but they came from, again, different angles. Like, I mean, the Tea Party, again, was kind of like it was like a vast ideological movement. Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio were all Tea Partiers, and these guys are vastly different ideologically. Marco Rubio is a neocon, Rand Paul, I don't know why I said Donald Trump when I said meant Rand Paul. Rand Paul was a libertarian, and Ted Cruz is more of like a generic Christian conservative. But why does Rubio get to be number 2? Why does he get silver medal? Well, it all has to do with one thing, again, the neoconservatism. You see, Donald Trump's foreign policy is, of course, obviously very confusing. He's a bit of an isolationist. He's a bit of a, he's like a Republican isolationist, which basically means literally just, again, poning the libs, I guess. He has no really coherent foreign policy, except for basically just all the things that Russia wants because, he's secretly a Russian asset. Shh, can't say that, though. But that's the big problem. Marco Rubio, being a neocon, in the John McCain style, he loves Ukraine and hates Russia because he's part of that Cold War mentality. Literally every single bill that wants to punish Russia and protect Ukraine has gotten Marco Rubio's signature and vote. Now, he's in a position where he's advocating for the Trump foreign policy. He has to literally leave Ukraine out to dry and suck up to Russia now. In exchange, Marco Rubio gets to play with his little toy soldiers in the Middle East and Latin America, which is where the agreement between the two lie. But again, in order to do that, he had to sell out Ukraine. Silver medal of cuckitude, here we go. But with all those names out of the way, this is the one, with all those names out, the fact that I named all those people probably lets you wonder, wait, if these guys are not fucking number 1, then who is? Who is the one that truly sits in the cuck chair of the Republican Party? Who gets the gold medal in cuckery? Who is the number 1 cuck-servative out there? In my opinion, there's only one guy who truly earns that title. And his name is Michael Shumway Lee, the senior senator from Utah. Now, in order to understand how much of a cuck Mike Lee is, we need to understand Mike Lee's career before Donald Trump became president. Lee was elected with the Tea Party wave, pitched himself as a constitutional conservative, which actually led to him to become at least somewhat of a libertarian on some issues, levying a lot of legitimate critiques to Obama, voting against the Patriot Act extensions, advocating for withdrawal from Afghanistan. Obviously, there's disagreements between me and Mike Lee, obviously. I'm a socialist, he's not. But he also made himself known about his positions on a lot of the fucking strange and cringe things he's advocating for. I'm pretty sure he voted, he wanted to introduce a bill to make it so that senators were no longer directly elected by the people. But again, Mike Lee was at least somewhat notable as a constitutional conservative, where even you could be there's at least some semblance of understanding of goodness in there. I don't know. I don't know if you mean that goodness or there's some elements of agreement, I guess. And when Trump came along, Lee, like a lot of Republicans, was critical of Donald Trump because of not only the obvious ideological disagreements, but also some personality concerns that were going on with Trump. Lee pointed out how Trump's attacks on Muslims was terrible because the wheel can and has easily be turned to other religious minority groups, citing the fact that Lee, as a Mormon, was literally part of he's part of a religious group that was at one point literally ordered to be exterminated by the governor of Missouri. So of course, he's I'm not just going to shift this blame to another minority group. He endorsed Ted Cruz, who was of course the most likely Republican nominee outside of possibly Trump, but also him and Cruz were very best friends. And to the point where he was hey, Donald, stop attacking my best friend Ted Cruz. Like, literally, like, he hated, like he got into an argument with, like, a newscaster who was like, why are you not supporting Donald Trump? And he's like, dude, he fucking said that my best friend's dad was a fucking killed John F. Kennedy. Why would I support that guy? And Lee was even more critical than a lot of Republicans. He explicitly stated how he voted against Donald Trump in supporting Evan McMullin. Like, even to the point where, like, he and Evan McMullin don't agree on a lot. Evan McMullin is a neocon. So there was a disagreement between him and Evan McMullin. But he couldn't in good faith support Donald Trump, and Evan McMullin was the biggest, like, conservative alternative in his home state. Even in the early Trump administration, Lee was still a very prominent critic of Donald Trump. He joined up with Bernie Sanders to try and end the Yemen genocide by invoking the War Powers Act. He voted against Trump Care, and even voted against Trump's state of emergency at the border. He wasn't like a massive anti-Trump voice. I mean, like, yeah, he's, again, a conservative, so he, of course, agreed with Donald Trump on some issues, obviously. But he wasn't like a massive anti-Trump voice, but he was also clearly not a loyalist. And there was at least consistency. He opposed Obama when Obama did some foreign policy thing that was bad. He would oppose Donald Trump on those same merits. Not like the thing that we see where it's like, you know, somehow Democrats are like, we vote for every single NDAA when it comes to the, like, Democrat administration. When it comes to the Republican administration, magically we vote against every single NDAA. And then COVID happened, and magically everything went crazy. I might make a video just purely just like talking about like the fact that it's just really weird how COVID changed so much. Mike Lee was now all of a sudden comparing Donald Trump to religious figures in Mormonism. Because again, like I mean, every single Republican politician, you know, magically they were like they magically they liked Trump when it came to the 2020 election. When at best the previous vibe was that a majority of Republican politicians at the tolerated Trump, it seemed like now all of a sudden they were acting like as if they were Trumpsters from day one, and now all of a sudden they were all becoming parakeets. It's saying all the things that all the Trump base was saying. Suddenly they believed that 2020 was rigged. They were subtly hinting at QAnon stuff. And very strangely, they just started openly being like, yeah, we will just, like, we didn't like you before, but now all of a sudden they're literally willing to be like, we will literally help you overthrow the fucking government. Mike Lee was literally behind the scenes, like one of the prime movers to try and legitimize the 2020 election rigging. He tried to help legitimize it. And Lee's was one of these oddest ones, because again, this is the thing that we all know, you know, obviously we all know that most, if not all, the Republican politicians who claimed the claim that the 2020 election was rigged, none of them believe it. Like, everybody knows that. None of them believe it. But Mike Lee is the strangest one of the bunch. He literally just openly said he did not believe a single fucking word of any of the lies. Like, this wasn't him trying to correct a wrong in the sense of, oh, I believe the election was rigged and I'm going to do this. He didn't even lie about thinking that it was rigged and that he was doing this to do something about that. He just openly said, no, he just believed that the United States, like, should have the Republican, like, held legislatures just choose alternative electors because he just genuinely believes that's how the country should be run. That, I guess, they literally, democracy made the wrong choice and that the elite should get the ability to fucking correct it. Like, and bro, he didn't even vote against certifying the election results. Like, he did not believe a single fucking word of the election being rigged. He literally just wanted to fucking rig the election because. And then afterwards, Lee just fell off the deep end. Suddenly he had his based Mike Lee account where he starts posting a bunch of like right-wing culture war issues and going and saying stuff like, this account is no cap bussin' for real. I put he in quotes because, well, for a long time, we were all wondering, like, we all basically wondered if the account was actually his. I think I remember reading a story where it was just like, people were like, is this actually Mike Lee's Twitter account? And then it's like, but like, realistically, most people knew that even if this was an officially sanctioned Mike Lee account, which it turned out to be, it was probably just an intern that was just doing all this shit because, you know, the right-wing, like, you know, interns are obviously all the ones that are like fucking Nazis and was like doing the whole like whatever. But this is seeped into his actual electoral work where now he's just consumed by bullshit culture war issues to pwn the libs. That's literally all he does now. Like, the contrast is so big. Like, I mean, again, like, they pointed out with the base Mike Lee account. Like, originally, Mike Lee was like a soft-spoken, you know, like, I'm a constitutional conservative type. And now he's going on, like, fucking online rants where he's just like, lol, this is fucking cringe. Democrats vote for this issue. And you see it just in the sense of, like, the issues that he fucking advocates for. Mike Lee's number one issue in the 2010s, curtail NSA surveillance. Pull back, you know, foreign interventions from, like, whatever, the Obama administration. What are his big issues in this term? Try to make it so that the government can ban porn and track you for going on porn sites. And ignore the fact that he didn't even have any hand in, like, you know, supporting. Like, he had no hand in actually drafting a War Powers Resolution. He didn't even vote for a War Powers Resolution. Because, again, this time, he's just a Trump sycophant. Trump does no wrong, and he will support everything Trump does now. And it's pathetic. And that's why Mike Lee is the number one cuck in the Republican Party. No ifs, ands, or buts. Just unequivocally. And hopefully, we all know this now, so that we can understand this moving forward. Mike Lee is the biggest cuck of the Republican Party. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the bell to notify a future video of mine comes out. And if you want more content from me, consider supporting me on Patreon.